25 Black celebrities who had secret children you didn't know about. Behind the glamour, the trophies, and the carefully crafted smiles, there are secrets many legends never wanted the world to see. What happens when fame is powerful enough to hide a child? When millions of fans cheer, but a son or daughter grows up in silence? Tonight, we expose the stories that were buried for years, children kept out of the spotlight, truths revealed only through lawsuits, scandals, or rivals' words. These are not rumors. These are documented realities that changed lives forever. Stay with us, because what you're about to hear may change how you see celebrity fatherhood. Welcome to Black Excellence Legends, and don't forget to comment as we begin. Reverend Jesse Jackson. For decades, Reverend Jesse Jackson stood as one of the most powerful, moral voices in modern American history. A civil rights leader, presidential candidate, and longtime ally of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Jackson built a public image rooted in discipline, family values, and social justice. His speeches shaped generations, and his influence extended from the pulpit to global diplomacy. That reputation made what emerged in 2001 all the more jarring. That year, Jackson publicly acknowledged that he had fathered a child outside his marriage. The child, Ashley Stanford, was born in 1999 to Karen Stanford, a former staff member at the Rainbow/Push Coalition, the organization Jackson founded. The relationship had lasted several years and was kept private until media reports made silence impossible. At the time of the revelation, Jackson had been married to his wife Jacqueline for more than 35 years. What shocked the public was not only the existence of the child, but the contrast between Jackson's public role and his private actions. He admitted that he had been providing financial support and took responsibility without disputing paternity. There were no DNA court battles, no denials after exposure, only a public apology and a visible fall from moral authority. Political allies distanced themselves, donors withdrew, and Jackson's standing as a national conscience was deeply damaged. Importantly, there is no evidence that Jackson denied the child once the truth surfaced, nor that illegal actions were involved. The scandal was one of trust and hypocrisy, not crime. Over time, Jackson maintained a relationship with his daughter, who later pursued a career in journalism and spoke openly about forging her own identity outside her father's shadow. The tragedy of Jesse Jackson's story lies in contradiction. A man who fought relentlessly for accountability was undone by a failure to live fully by the standards he championed. His legacy remains complex, defined not only by historic achievements, but by a reminder that even icons are vulnerable to human weakness. Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson's life has always existed at extremes: historic success, public collapse, and relentless scrutiny. Crowned the youngest heavyweight boxing champion in history at age 20, Tyson became a global symbol of raw power. Yet behind the fame and controversy was a deeply fragmented personal life, including children who lived far from public view. One of the most painful chapters involved his daughter, Exodus Tyson, whose existence was largely unknown to the public until tragedy struck. Exodus was born in 2005 to a former partner who lived outside the media spotlight. Unlike some celebrity cases filled with denial or litigation, there is no verified evidence that Tyson legally rejected or disputed his paternity. However, Exodus was not part of Tyson's public narrative, and her life remained private by design. That privacy ended abruptly on May 25, 2009, when Exodus was found unconscious at her home in Phoenix after becoming entangled in a treadmill cord. She was rushed to the hospital and placed on life support, but doctors confirmed she had suffered fatal brain injury. She died the following day at just 4 years old. Tyson, who was in Las Vegas at the time, immediately returned and withdrew from public life. Friends later described him as emotionally shattered. In interviews, Tyson admitted that no defeat in the ring compared to the pain of losing a child. The tragedy reshaped him. Tyson became more introspective, openly discussing guilt, regret, and the cost of living recklessly. His story is not about denial, but about absence, the gap between fame and presence, success and responsibility. Exodus. Tyson's death exposed the quiet truth that even the most feared man in boxing could be rendered powerless by loss. Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy built one of the most successful careers in entertainment history. From stand-up comedy to blockbuster films, he became synonymous with charisma, humor, and commercial dominance. Yet in 2007, Murphy faced a scandal that sharply contrasted with his polished public image, the revelation of a child he initially refused to acknowledge. That year, Melanie Mel B. Brown, a member of the Spice Girls, gave birth to a daughter named Angel Iris Murphy Brown. Murphy publicly questioned paternity, stating that he did not believe the child was his and would wait for DNA confirmation. The comment triggered immediate backlash. Critics accused him of irresponsibility, and the media framed the situation as a powerful man attempting to evade accountability. The truth arrived swiftly. A court-ordered DNA test confirmed with 99.9% certainty that Murphy was Angel's biological father. The denial ended there. Murphy was ordered to pay child support and later reached a financial settlement with Mel B. Over time, he softened his stance and gradually acknowledged Angel as part of his family, though their relationship developed privately. Importantly, there is no evidence that Murphy continued to deny the child after DNA confirmation. The controversy stemmed from his initial public rejection, not prolonged avoidance. Still, the damage was done. The incident followed him for years, frequently resurfacing whenever discussions of celebrity fatherhood arose. Murphy's story reflects a modern form of tragedy, not secrecy alone, but hesitation. In an age of instant exposure, his delay in accepting responsibility cost him public trust. It stands as a reminder that silence, even temporary, can echo louder than denial, especially when a child's identity is at stake. Flavor Flav. Flavor Flav built his image on chaos, humor, and unpredictability. As a founding member of Public Enemy, he helped shape political hip-hop, then reinvented himself decades later as a reality TV personality whose personal life played out on screen. Ironically, behind all that exposure, there was a child the public knew nothing about for years. In 2019, a woman named Elizabeth Trujillo filed a lawsuit claiming Flavor Flav was the biological father of her son, Karma Trujillo, born in 2007. Until that moment, the child had never been publicly acknowledged. The lawsuit alleged years of missed child support and emotional abandonment. What shocked fans most was the contrast between Flav's televised persona as an involved father to multiple children and the reality unfolding in court. Initially, Flavor Flav's name was not listed on the birth certificate, and paternity had never been legally established. The court ordered a DNA test, which confirmed he was the biological father. Only then did Flav formally acknowledge the child and begin addressing legal responsibilities. There is no verified evidence that he continued denial after the DNA results. The fallout was swift. Critics accused him of hypocrisy, especially given his repeated public emphasis on family during his reality TV years. Others argued the case exposed how celebrity visibility does not equal accountability. Unlike earlier eras, secrecy here was not maintained through silence, but through selective storytelling. Flavor Flav's case illustrates a modern paradox. A man whose life seemed permanently on display still managed to keep one of the most significant truths hidden. The tragedy is not only the delay in acknowledgement, but the emotional cost paid by a child growing up outside the spotlight while watching their father perform fatherhood for millions. Floyd Mayweather Jr. Floyd Mayweather Jr. is celebrated as one of boxing's greatest fighters, undefeated in 50 professional bouts, synonymous with wealth, control, and dominance. Yet his most damaging defeat came not in the ring, but in his private life, where a child he rarely acknowledged became a witness to violence that shattered the image of invincibility. Mayweather has several children, but the most painful story centers on his son, Karan Mayweather, born in 1999 to Josie Harris. For years, Karan remained largely absent from Mayweather's carefully curated public persona. His existence became widely known only through court proceedings and media coverage tied to domestic violence allegations. In 2010, when Karan was just 10 years old, he witnessed Mayweather violently assault his mother inside their home. In a moment that changed everything, the child ran outside and called emergency services. His testimony became a crucial part of the case that led to Mayweather serving 90 days in jail in 2012. There is no evidence that Mayweather denied paternity, but his emotional absence and lack of public acknowledgement were widely criticized. As Karan grew older, he spoke openly on social media, expressing anger, disappointment, and a refusal to forgive. He described his father as present in wealth, but absent in care. The tragedy of this story is layered. A child hidden from public pride became central to exposing the truth behind the facade. Mayweather's perfect record could not protect him from accountability when his own son became the voice that forced justice forward. His legacy now carries a contradiction that money and victories cannot erase. Greatness in sport does not guarantee greatness in fatherhood. Al B. Sure was one of the defining voices of late 1980s and early 1990s R&B. With chart-topping hits, industry awards, and a smooth persona that symbolized romance and success, he appeared to live a carefully curated life. Yet behind that polished image was a truth kept largely out of public view for years: the existence of his son, Devin Brown. Devin was born in 1991 to Kim Porter, who later became widely known as a longtime partner of Sean "Diddy" Combs. While Kim Porter's family with Diddy became highly visible in media and pop culture, Devin grew up mostly outside public awareness. Al B. Sure did not publicly acknowledge Devin during the height of his career, and the child was rarely mentioned in interviews or promotional narratives surrounding the singer. Importantly, there is no verified evidence that Al B. Sure legally denied paternity or disputed Devin's identity. The secrecy was not enforced through court battles, but through silence. Devin lived away from the spotlight while carrying the legacy of a famous father whose name was never openly attached to his upbringing. It wasn't until Devin pursued music himself that public curiosity began to surface, connecting the dots that had long been ignored. In later years, Al B. Sure spoke about regret, health struggles, and the cost of fame, suggesting a broader reflection on choices made during his peak years. Devin, meanwhile, carved his own identity, separate from both Al B. Sure and the celebrity household he was indirectly connected to. The tragedy here is not confrontation, but absence. Al B. Sure's story reflects how silence can shape a child's life as powerfully as denial, and how fame can make it easier to hide responsibility than to confront it openly. Master P. Master P is widely admired for transforming himself from a struggling entrepreneur into the head of No Limit Records, one of hip-hop's most influential business empires. He built wealth, independence, and a family brand that positioned him as a hands-on father, especially through the highly public rise of his son Romeo Miller, who became a child star and heir apparent to the Miller legacy. What the public did not initially see was that Master P had several other children whose lives unfolded far from the spotlight. Children such as Mercy Miller and Italy Miller existed quietly for years, rarely mentioned in interviews or promotional appearances. While they were not biologically secret, their absence from Master P's public narrative created the perception of selective recognition. The contrast became more visible as the family entered reality television and legal disputes. Sonia C., Master P's former partner and the mother of several of his children, later accused him of financial control and unequal treatment. Court filings and media coverage revealed tensions over support, acknowledgement, and fairness among the siblings. The issue was not whether the children existed, but why some were celebrated while others remained invisible. There is no evidence that Master P denied paternity of any of his children. However, critics argued that public favoritism created emotional consequences just as lasting as secrecy. Fame and opportunity were distributed unevenly, shaping how the world, and the children themselves, understood their place within the family. Master P's story exposes a different kind of tragedy. Not a hidden child, but a hierarchy of recognition. In building an empire, he decided which faces represented the brand, and which lives unfolded outside its glow. The cost of that choice was carried not in headlines, but within the family itself. R. Kelly. For years, R. Kelly crafted an image built on chart-topping love songs and commercial dominance. Behind that carefully managed persona was a family life kept deliberately private, including his son, Robert Kelly Jr., born in 2002, to his then-wife, Andrea Kelly. Unlike many celebrity parents who showcase their children, Kelly rarely acknowledged his son publicly, keeping him almost entirely out of the spotlight during the peak of his career. There is no evidence that R. Kelly denied paternity. The secrecy instead stemmed from control. Andrea Kelly later testified that their household was governed by fear, isolation, and strict rules, describing an environment where children were shielded from the outside world and from public attention. Robert Jr. grew up largely unseen, even as his father's fame intensified. As allegations against R. Kelly escalated in the late 2000s and 2010s, questions about his private life resurfaced. Andrea Kelly eventually spoke out, not only about abuse she endured, but about the emotional toll on their children. Robert Jr. became a silent witness to the collapse of a public empire and the exposure of long-hidden behavior. When R. Kelly was convicted on federal charges and sentenced to decades in prison, the tragedy reached its final form. A man who sang endlessly about love left behind children forced to reconcile talent with trauma. Robert Jr. did not inherit a legacy of protection or pride, but one defined by silence and shame. This story is not about secret biology, but about hidden childhood. R. Kelly's son existed outside public view, not by accident, but by design, illustrating how secrecy can function as another layer of control, long before the truth finally breaks through. DMX. DMX lived his life openly conflicted, publicly wrestling with faith, addiction, and pain. Yet even amid that raw honesty, much of his fatherhood remained hidden. Over the course of his life, DMX fathered 15 children with multiple women, many of whom were unknown to the public until legal disputes and later, his death brought their names into view. One of the most striking cases involves Sasha Simmons, whose existence surfaced through child support litigation. Like several of DMX's children, she grew up largely without her father's presence, despite his immense fame and financial success at various points. Court records revealed repeated struggles to meet obligations, underscoring a pattern of absence rather than denial. There is no evidence that DMX disputed being the father of his children once paternity was established. The secrecy was instead a byproduct of instability. Addiction, incarceration, and financial collapse created fractured relationships that left many of his children disconnected from one another and from him. When DMX died in 2021 at age 50, the extent of his family became fully visible. Children who had never met were suddenly connected through grief and legal proceedings surrounding his estate. Questions of recognition, inheritance, and responsibility dominated the aftermath, exposing the scale of what had been hidden. DMX's tragedy lies in contradiction. A man who preached redemption struggled to live it consistently as a father. His children inherited his name, but often without guidance or stability. The secrecy was not malicious, it was chaotic. And in the end, it left behind a legacy defined not only by music, but by unfinished relationships that no apology could fully repair. Snoop Dogg. For decades, Snoop Dogg cultivated an image that blended rebellion with family stability. As his career matured, he frequently presented himself as a devoted husband and father, showcasing his children with his wife, Shantae Broaddus, in interviews and public appearances. Yet behind that carefully maintained picture was a truth that remained unspoken for years: the existence of his son, Julian Corey Broaddus. Julian was born in 1998 to Lori Holman, the result of an affair during a turbulent period in Snoop's marriage. For more than a decade, Julian lived largely outside the public eye and outside Snoop's acknowledged family narrative. There is no evidence that Snoop Dogg denied paternity once it was legally established, but he also did not actively claim a public role in Julian's upbringing during the child's early years. The truth surfaced publicly in the mid-2000s through legal proceedings related to child support. At that point, Snoop acknowledged Julian privately and complied with court obligations. Still, the emotional distance remained. Julian later spoke about growing up without a father figure, describing the experience as isolating, despite carrying one of hip-hop's most recognizable surnames. Unlike many sensational celebrity cases, this story is not defined by courtroom battles or public accusations. Its weight comes from contrast. While Snoop's public children were embraced as extensions of his legacy, Julian's existence unfolded quietly, shaped by separation rather than scandal. The tragedy here is selective visibility. Snoop Dogg mastered reinvention in music and culture, but struggled to integrate all parts of his personal history into the same frame. Julian's story stands as a reminder that recognition delayed can shape a child's identity long after the spotlight finally turns on. Jay-Z represents one of the most meticulously controlled images in modern entertainment. Rising from Brooklyn's streets to become a billionaire mogul, he built an empire grounded in precision, strategy, and silence. That silence has fueled controversy surrounding long-standing paternity allegations involving a man named Rymir Satterthwaite, a case often misrepresented online. It is critical to state clearly, there is no verified DNA evidence confirming that Jay-Z is Rymir's biological father. The claim originates from Wanda Satterthwaite, who alleged that Jay-Z fathered her son in the early 1990s. Over the years, Rymir pursued legal action seeking a court-ordered DNA test. Courts dismissed or closed cases on procedural grounds, including jurisdiction and statute limitations, not on confirmed paternity. Jay-Z has never publicly acknowledged Rymir as his child, nor has any court ruled that he is the father. This distinction matters. Many viral narratives frame the situation as a proven secret child, which is factually inaccurate. What is true is that the allegation has persisted for decades, fueled by frustration, power imbalance, and public curiosity. The tragedy here lies not in proven deception, but in unresolved truth. Rymir grew up believing a powerful figure refused to answer a fundamental question about his identity. Jay-Z, meanwhile, chose legal silence, consistent with his long-standing approach to personal controversy. This story occupies a gray zone, where fame, money, and legal strategy collide with a young man's search for certainty. Whether Jay-Z is innocent or simply unreachable remains unknown. What endures is the discomfort. When power allows silence, truth can remain forever out of reach. Sean Diddy Combs. For years, Sean Diddy Combs cultivated an image of loyalty, control, and family unity. As a music mogul who built Bad Boy Records into a cultural empire, he carefully managed both business and personal narratives. That image fractured in 2006 when the public learned that Diddy had fathered a child outside his long-term relationship with Kim Porter, the woman widely regarded as the anchor of his private life. The child, Chance Combs, was born in 2006 to Sarah Chapman, a woman who had never appeared in Diddy's public world. At the time, Kim Porter was pregnant with Diddy's twin daughters, Jessie and Delilah. The overlap made the revelation devastating, Not just a secret child, but a secret life existing parallel to a committed relationship. Importantly, Diddy did not deny paternity once the truth emerged. He acknowledged Chance and eventually integrated her into the broader Combs family. However, the damage had already been done. Kim Porter ended the relationship in 2007, walking away after more than a decade together. She rarely spoke publicly about the betrayal, choosing privacy over spectacle. The tragedy here is layered. Chance grew up knowing she was loved by her father, but also knowing her existence altered lives before she could understand them. Kim Porter, who later passed away in 2018, left behind a legacy of dignity amid heartbreak. Diddy continued to expand his empire, but the illusion of control over his personal life was permanently broken. This story is not about denial, it is about timing and consequence. Diddy's secret child did not remain hidden forever, but the silence surrounding her birth reshaped a family in ways money and acknowledgement could never undo. Busta Rhymes. Busta Rhymes built his career on explosive energy, lyrical precision, and unrelenting presence. Yet behind the commanding stage persona was a deeply private man who resisted exposing his personal life, even when it involved fatherhood. That resistance became public in the late 1990s and early 2000s, when a legal battle revealed the existence of his daughter, Mariah Smith. Mariah was born in 1998 to Jill Scott Smith, following a brief relationship during the height of Busta's career. For years, her existence was not publicly acknowledged. There were no interviews, no photographs, and no mention in the narrative surrounding the rapper's rise. Jill eventually turned to the courts, seeking child support and formal recognition. Court records confirm Busta Rhymes as Mariah's biological father. Unlike some celebrity cases marked by quick settlements, this dispute stretched on, characterized by resistance and delay. Busta did not publicly speak about the case, allowing legal documents, not personal statements, to define the narrative. There is no evidence that Busta denied paternity after confirmation, but the prolonged legal process suggested reluctance to accept the role openly. Mariah's introduction to the public came not through celebration, but through litigation, an impersonal path that shaped how the story was received. The tragedy here is not fame alone, but exposure without warmth. A child entered the public record through conflict rather than choice. Busta Rhymes continued his career largely unaffected, while Mariah grew up knowing her identity had been contested before it was accepted. This case underscores a recurring pattern. When celebrities choose silence over accountability, courts become the voice children never asked to need. Stevie J. Stevie J rose to prominence as a Grammy-winning producer, shaping classic records while keeping much of his private life out of public view. Long before reality television made him a household name, Stevie J fathered a daughter whose existence remained largely unknown for years. That child, Savannah Jordan, was born in 1998 to Carol Bennett, during a period when Stevie's career was thriving, but his personal responsibilities were fractured. There is no evidence that Stevie J legally denied paternity. However, Savannah was not publicly acknowledged throughout her childhood. She grew up outside the celebrity narrative that later surrounded her father, without the visibility or recognition that often comes with fame. The secrecy was not enforced by contracts or denials, but by absence, an omission that allowed years to pass without public accountability. The truth emerged prominently in the early 2010s, when Stevie J joined Love and Hip Hop Atlanta. As the show exposed tangled relationships and unresolved conflicts, Carol Bennett came forward publicly, accusing Stevie of neglect and unpaid child support. Court filings followed, placing Savannah at the center of a story she never chose to tell. For the first time, audiences saw how a child could remain invisible, even as a parent's life played out on television. The tragedy in Stevie J's story lies in timing. Savannah's introduction to the world arrived through confrontation rather than care. Fame amplified the reckoning, but could not repair lost years. While Stevie J attempted reconciliation later, the damage of distance had already shaped a childhood. This case illustrates a modern paradox. Reality TV promises transparency, yet some truths surface only when silence becomes unsustainable, often at the cost of those least protected by fame. Nas. Nas has long been praised for lyrical honesty, documenting struggle, vulnerability, and consequence in his music. Yet when it came to fatherhood, he chose privacy, especially during one of the most volatile periods of his life. In 2009, Nas welcomed a son, Knight Jones, with singer Khalees, amid a marriage already unraveling. Knight's birth coincided with a bitter and highly public divorce. Allegations of infidelity, neglect, and financial dispute dominated headlines, leaving little room for a newborn's quiet introduction to the world. For several years, Nas kept his son largely out of the public eye. There were no early interviews, no public displays, only fragments revealed through court documents and tabloid reporting. It is important to note, there is no evidence that Nas denied paternity or attempted to hide Knight's existence unlawfully. The secrecy was protective, not deceptive. Both parents cited concerns about media intrusion and emotional harm as reasons for limiting exposure. However, as legal battles intensified, Knight's name became public through filings and statements neither parent could fully control. The tragedy here is collateral damage. A child entered life during conflict and became a reference point in disputes he could not understand. While Nas later shared moments of fatherhood publicly and emphasized growth and responsibility, those early years were defined by tension rather than peace. Nas's story reflects a quieter kind of secrecy, one driven by chaos rather than avoidance. It reminds us that even when intentions are protective, prolonged silence can still shape a child's identity in lasting ways. 50 Cent. 50 Cent, born Curtis Jackson, built his reputation on resilience, surviving violence, dominating music charts, and transforming himself into a business mogul. Yet even as he projected fearlessness, one part of his personal life remained carefully guarded for years: the existence of his son, Sire Jackson. Unlike some celebrity cases marked by denial, this story centers on secrecy shaped by control and circumstance. Sire was born in 2012 to model Daphne Joy. For the first years of his life, his identity remained largely unknown to the public. The truth emerged not through celebration, but via court documents related to custody and child support. When the media revealed the filings, 50 Cent was forced to acknowledge fatherhood publicly. He did so without disputing paternity and later embraced Sire openly. Importantly, there is no evidence that 50 Cent denied being Sire's father. Instead, he stated that privacy was necessary due to security concerns tied to his public persona and past conflicts. Once acknowledged, Sire quickly became visible, appearing in photos, fashion campaigns, and even securing a high-profile modeling contract as a toddler. The tragedy here lies in contrast. A child transitioned abruptly from invisibility to intense exposure. While material security was never in question, emotional continuity was disrupted by secrecy and sudden attention. 50 Cent later spoke about fatherhood with pride, but the early silence shaped how the story unfolded. This case highlights a modern dilemma, when protection becomes concealment. Fame can offer safety, but it can also delay honesty, leaving children to inherit the consequences of decisions made before they could speak for themselves. T.I., one of hip-hop's most influential figures, long presented himself as a disciplined family man, married, outspoken about values, and deeply involved in his children's lives. Yet one of his earliest children, Deja Harris, lived largely outside the public narrative for years, creating a perception of secrecy that later collided with controversy. Deja was born in 2001 to Raniqua Ms. Nico Harris, before T.I.'s marriage to Tiny Harris, and before his family brand became a centerpiece of reality television. While T.I. did not deny paternity, Deja received far less public visibility than his later children. As T.I.'s fame grew, she remained mostly absent from interviews and media appearances, existing on the margins of a highly public family image. That changed dramatically in 2019, when T.I. made public comments about taking his daughter to annual gynecological exams to check her virginity. The remarks sparked international outrage, with medical professionals, advocacy groups, and fans condemning the statements as invasive and harmful. Deja later expressed emotional distress, confirming that the comments deeply affected her. The tragedy here is exposure without consent. A daughter once kept private became the focal point of a global debate about control, autonomy, and parental boundaries. While T.I. attempted to clarify and later walk back his remarks, the damage was already done. Deja's story reveals how secrecy can flip into spectacle. When private lives are managed too tightly, their eventual exposure can be far more destructive, especially for children forced to carry the weight of public scrutiny they never chose. Rick Ross. Rick Ross built his brand on excess, private jets, Maybachs, and an image of unstoppable dominance. As the founder of Maybach Music Group, he carefully controlled how the world saw him. Yet in 2017, that image cracked when court filings revealed the existence of a daughter the public had never heard of. Berkeley Hermes Roberts. Berkeley was born to Brianna Camille, a woman Ross had previously kept out of the spotlight. For years, there were no photos, no acknowledgements, and no public references linking Ross to the child. The truth surfaced only when Brianna filed a child support lawsuit, forcing Ross's private life into the public record. The case revealed that Berkeley had been living largely outside her father's highly visible world. Importantly, Rick Ross did not deny paternity once legal proceedings began. However, the delayed acknowledgement raised questions about why the child remained hidden for so long. Ross later stated that he valued privacy for his children, but critics noted that his other children were publicly known, making Berkeley's absence more striking. The emotional weight of this story lies in timing. Berkeley's identity became public not through celebration, but through conflict. While Ross later shared moments of fatherhood and spoke about growth, the early years of silence could not be undone. Fame ensured financial security, but it could not rewrite the narrative of concealment. Rick Ross's case underscores a recurring pattern in celebrity culture. When control over image outweighs transparency, children often become footnotes, introduced only when silence is no longer legally possible. Ludacris. Ludacris, born Christopher Bridges, was long admired for balancing mainstream success with a polished public persona. Actor, rapper, and entrepreneur, he appeared to have his life carefully ordered. That perception shifted in 2013, when the existence of a daughter few knew about came to light. The child, Kai Bella Bridges, was born to Tamika Fuller following a brief relationship. Initially, Kai Bella's birth remained private. However, the situation escalated when Tamika filed for child support, revealing the child's existence to the public. What followed was not denial, but an aggressive legal response. Ludacris countered by filing for full custody, a move that shocked many observers. The legal battle became intense and public, with both sides presenting conflicting narratives. In 2015, the court ultimately granted Ludacris primary custody of Kai Bella, citing stability and resources. While the ruling ended the legal fight, it left lingering questions about motivation and timing. There is no evidence that Ludacris denied paternity. However, the speed and strategy of the custody filing led critics to question whether the move was driven by fatherly concern or legal positioning. Tamika Fuller later stated that she felt sidelined and silenced by the process. The tragedy here is complexity. A child became the center of a courtroom struggle before she could speak her first words. Though Ludacris later shared moments of fatherhood publicly, Kai Bella's introduction to the world was shaped by conflict rather than choice. This story highlights how quickly secrecy can transform into warfare, especially when fame, power, and parenthood collide. The Game. The Game, born Jason Taylor, has never shied away from controversy. His music, interviews, and public feuds all project raw honesty. Yet one of the most significant parts of his life, fatherhood, remains selectively hidden for years. While fans knew about his sons from earlier relationships, the existence of his daughter, California Callie Dream Taylor, was largely unknown to the public until the early 2000s. Callie Dream was born in 2010 to Tiffany Cambridge, during a period when the game was highly visible in music and media. Despite this, she was not mentioned in interviews, lyrics, or public appearances. For nearly 2 years, she existed entirely outside the narrative he presented to fans. There is no evidence that the game denied paternity. Rather, the secrecy came from omission and silence. The truth surfaced in 2012, not through a press release or interview, but via the reality television series Marrying the Game. Viewers were stunned when Callie appeared on screen, revealing that the rapper had a daughter many never knew existed. The moment instantly reframed his public image, exposing a carefully controlled boundary between fame and family. The emotional tension of this story lies in contradiction. A man celebrated for transparency chose privacy when it mattered most. While the game later embraced Callie publicly and spoke about loving all his children, the delayed acknowledgement shaped how the revelation was received. This case reflects a softer form of secrecy, one driven not by denial, but by control. It shows how even outspoken celebrities can compartmentalize fatherhood, allowing years to pass before the world is invited into a child's life. Lil Wayne rose to superstardom at a young age, building one of the most influential careers in hip-hop history. By the late 2000s, his music dominated charts, his lifestyle dominated headlines, and his personal life appeared fully visible. Yet during this peak, Wayne quietly became a father again, this time without public acknowledgement. In 2008, Lil Wayne welcomed a son, Dwayne Carter III, with Sarah Vivon, a radio personality based in Cincinnati. Unlike Wayne's earlier children, whose mothers and births were widely known, this child's existence remained largely undisclosed. There were no announcements, no interviews, and no public discussion. For years, fans were unaware that another heir existed. Wayne did not deny paternity, nor was there a legal dispute forcing the truth out. Instead, the secrecy was voluntary. The public learned about Dwayne III only when Wayne casually confirmed it years later during interviews, treating the revelation as an afterthought rather than a milestone. The tragedy here is subtle. A child grew up with a famous father whose world was loud, chaotic, and constantly documented, yet his own presence in that world was muted. While Wayne has since acknowledged all his children and spoken about fatherhood more openly, the early silence shaped perceptions. Lil Wayne's story illustrates how secrecy does not always involve scandal. Sometimes it is the quiet choice to keep life compartmentalized. But even silent decisions leave marks, especially on children born during the loudest moments of fame. Bow Wow, born Shad Moss, grew up in front of the world. From a teenage rap prodigy to a reality TV regular, his life seemed fully documented. Yet during his rise, one life-changing truth remained hidden: the existence of his daughter, Shy Moss. That secrecy would eventually unravel in a way that reshaped how the public viewed his transition from boy star to adult. Shy was born in 2011 to Joey Chavis, a dancer and fitness entrepreneur. For years, Bow Wow made no public acknowledgement of being a father. In interviews, he actively denied rumors, stating that he had no children and was focused on his career. This was not a case of privacy alone. It was verbal denial that contradicted reality. The truth emerged in 2012 when Joey Chavis went public. Facing mounting evidence and public pressure, Bow Wow admitted the truth through a written statement, confirming Shy was his daughter. He claimed he had wanted to protect her from fame and scrutiny, but the earlier denials damaged that explanation in the public eye. The emotional weight of this story lies in timing. Shy existed for more than a year before the world knew her name, and her introduction came through contradiction rather than celebration. While Bow Wow later embraced fatherhood, frequently posting photos and speaking about personal growth, the initial secrecy defined the narrative. This case illustrates a painful reality of early fame. Growing up under constant attention can stunt accountability, leading to decisions that hurt others quietly before they explode publicly. Bow Wow's story is not about abandoning fatherhood, but about accepting it only after denial became impossible. Future, born Navadius Wilburn, crafted an image of emotional detachment and excess, an artist whose music often blurs love, loss, and avoidance. Behind the hits and bravado was a truth that remained hidden for years: the existence of a son whose acknowledgement came not through choice, but through legal force. In 2002, a son named Jacoby Wilburn was born to Jessica Smith, long before Future became a global superstar. As his fame exploded in the early 2000s, Jacoby remained outside the public narrative. There were no mentions, no appearances, and no public recognition. For more than a decade, the child lived away from the spotlight of his father's success. The secrecy ended in 2013, when Jessica Smith filed a child support lawsuit. Court documents confirmed Future as the biological father, making Jacoby's existence public for the first time. Unlike some cases, there was no public denial once the case surfaced, but the delay in acknowledgement raised serious questions about responsibility and timing. The conflict intensified when Smith accused Future of misrepresenting his income to reduce child support payments. Media attention surged, painting a stark contrast between Future's lyrics about wealth and the courtroom disputes over basic parental obligations. The tragedy here is prolonged absence. A child watched his father become famous while remaining unrecognized until lawyers intervened. Though Future later acknowledged multiple children publicly and spoke vaguely about fatherhood, the emotional gap created by years of silence could not be erased. Future's story reflects a recurring theme in celebrity culture. When success arrives faster than maturity, children often pay the price, not in scandal, but in invisibility. Chris Brown. Chris Brown spent years navigating fame under relentless scrutiny. By the mid-2000s, his career had stabilized after earlier controversies, and his long-term relationship with Karrueche Tran was presented as serious and committed. That image collapsed in 2015 when the public learned, without warning, that Brown had secretly become a father. His daughter, Royalty Brown, was born to Nia Guzman in 2014. For nearly a year, her existence remained completely hidden from fans, media, and even Brown's then partner. There was no public denial, but also no acknowledgement. The secret ended abruptly when the story broke through the press, not by Brown's choice. The revelation detonated his personal life. Karrueche Tran ended the relationship immediately, stating she could not remain with someone who concealed something so life-altering. The fallout played out publicly, turning a private decision into a global spectacle. Brown soon confirmed paternity and expressed love for his daughter, but the damage to trust was irreversible. Legal disputes followed. Nia Guzman sought custody and child support, requesting $15,000 per month, citing security and lifestyle needs. Court proceedings made Royalty's life public before she could understand what fame meant. Brown later gained joint custody and gradually embraced fatherhood openly, frequently sharing photos and speaking about how becoming a father changed him. The tragedy in this story is not fatherhood, it is secrecy. Royalty was not denied, but she was hidden long enough to dismantle relationships and ignite legal battles. Her entry into the public world came through shock, not joy. Chris Brown's case shows how silence can be louder than denial, and how a single secret can redraw an entire life overnight. Drake built his career on emotional transparency, turning personal experiences into chart-topping confessions. Yet the most significant truth of his life remained hidden until it was forcefully exposed. In 2018, the world learned that Drake had a son, not through an interview or announcement, but through a diss track. His son, Adonis Graham, was born in 2017 to Sophie Brousseau, a French artist. For nearly a year, Drake kept the child completely private. There was no public acknowledgement, no denial, and no visible preparation for fatherhood in the public eye. The secrecy ended when rapper Pusha T revealed Adonis's existence in the song The Story of Adidon. The exposure was immediate and brutal. Fans questioned Drake's integrity, critics accused him of hypocrisy, and media outlets dissected every lyric in silence. Drake responded not with a press conference, but with music. On his 2018 album, Scorpion, he addressed the situation directly, stating, "I wasn't hiding my kid from the world. I was hiding the world from my kid." That statement framed the narrative going forward. Drake acknowledged paternity fully and later introduced Adonis publicly, sharing moments of fatherhood and emphasizing protection over shame. There is no evidence that Drake denied his son or avoided legal responsibility. The secrecy was strategic, but its exposure was involuntary. The tragedy here lies in control. Drake lost the chance to tell his own story first. Adonis entered public consciousness through humiliation and rivalry rather than care. While Drake later reclaimed the narrative, the moment of revelation was irreversible. This case proves that in the age of celebrity warfare, even the most carefully guarded truths can be weaponized, and once exposed, they can never return to silence. So here's the question no one likes to ask. Is protecting privacy the same as hiding responsibility? Were these celebrities shielding their children from fame or shielding themselves from accountability? Some stepped up, others were exposed, and some truths only surfaced when silence became impossible. These stories aren't just about secrets, they're about consequences that children carry for life. Fame can delay the truth, but it never erases it. Now we want to hear from you. Which story shocked you the most? Who do you think handled it right and who didn't? Drop your thoughts in the comments and join the conversation on Black Excellence Legends. Truth lives where silence ends.